Well, thank you, Jeremy Casella, for that wonderful play-in. Love that, brother. Thanks for lending us that song. Go check out Indelible Grace, Jeremy Casella. That is where we got that playing track from. I don't mention that enough, but we put it in our show notes. It's like the only thing in the show notes. So hopefully that's enough to just give you that. And he's got an album out. You need to go check that out as well. And we are very thankful for that playing. Be thou my great... Wow.
Guide me, oh.
You know what I'm thinking about? I'm thinking about Be Thou My Vision. We sang it on Sunday. Oh, man. That's my other... I mean, if we could do another one, Jeremy Casella, this is my personal request to you. If you wouldn't mind putting together Be Thou My Vision, that would be amazing. Although, actually, I don't want him to touch that tune. The tune is amazing as it is. Okay, we do not need revision of Be Thou My Vision. What we need is...
I always feel like it's overdone. I was listening to contemporary Christian music during the Celtic worship revival. Ooh. And it died for me. I just can't listen to Be Thou My Vision anymore, bro.
Really? See,
I just slaughtered it.
On Sunday, I was singing next to, a whole bunch of people, obviously, but one of the voices next to me was Welsh, and had a bit of a twang.
Made it sound better.
Oh man, I was just like, wow, that song just makes me want to pick up a sword, spiritually speaking, of course, and go and fight a battle. It's just awesome. But anyways, we don't have that song. We've got Guide Me, or Thou Great Jehovah, which is, what do you think of the original tune?
Love it, bro. Love it.
Yeah.
Evermore, feed me now and evermore.
I mean, it's good. Like, if you want to, I thought about putting it in the front of the podcast. It was just like the old tune was not working at all, because it sort of works when you're there in real life, but not when you're listening to it on any kind of...
I guess for me, it's like I'm always picturing myself in the congregation and I'm hearing other people singing the parts, and it just feels like it's all coming together in unity.
It's pretty powerful. So, it's like a marching song.
So not for entertainment purposes, but just for the feel, what it feels like when you're with people in church.
The two tunes have completely different feels, though, don't they? The one's like this marching stampede, and the other one is, the one we play in with. It's sort of very contemplative and yeah. But both have their place. They both work. So
yeah, man. So what are you going to be doing with the coronavirus, bro? Like if the Prime Minister has just announced no groups bigger than 500, and the next cut might be no groups bigger than 50.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna. This is actually I hope we get to self-isolate a little bit. That'd be amazing. But it's kind of interesting that you bring that up, Nick, because we're dealing with Basil of Caesarea, at least the long rules, not the song rules, and it's all about not self-isolating. This is what it's all about.
How ironic!
It's so ironic. We did not plan this. But it's so funny because the whole thing with Basil, right? I don't know what you know about him. But he's basically this super, super intense sort of founder of the monastic order. The difference being, if working off the life of St. Anthony and the Desert Fathers, his whole big thing there was the one problem with that is we don't like the fact that they're solitary. We must be living in community, and so no self-isolation. Which is kind of funny. Yeah. And that's really his whole jam, I mean, obviously you got Arianism. He was a big foe of Arianism.
He was a contemporary with Athanasius. Yep. Athanasius even defended him.
That's right.
He defended consubstantiality. That Jesus is homoousios, not homoousios or something.
Yes.
One or the other. I can't remember which one now.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And the other thing is just thinking about, so obviously Athanasius, Trinity, we've kind of covered that ground already in previous episodes. But the other thing that's actually, while you were talking, I remember, he, the long rules and the short rules of Basil provide something of a foundation to the rule of Benedict. And you've got, that's coming back in vogue big time with the Benedictine option and, whatever that book is called. And with a kind of, trying to bring in some neo-monasticism and that sort of thing. And so this is all background to that. And that's hyper-communal. Again, you're sort of retreating.
And one of Basil's biggest emphases was that, you don't just get sit in a room and fast and pray. You should be working as part of your life. And so he brought work back into it as well.
Hard work ethic. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because, you had, you could fault all of these things, right? All these avenues that they went down. But historically, we look back on it now, and you see how God made use of it all in quite profound ways. You think of the isolation stuff, and a lot of even just the monks, the way they were used to preserve with the scribal skills, they were preserving all the manuscripts. And what's interesting about this, I was reading, I think it was actually in Niebuhr's Christ and Culture. He was just saying, like, the irony of guys like Basil, and they although Basil perhaps is not the best example because he did kind of care about social work and all of that, but maybe the more withdrawn sort of monk movements, the irony there is that though they did not care in any way for social transformation, in the end they were far more successful in social transformation than those who actually attempted it and got obliterated with the culture. How that worked was, and it seems to have repeated itself, that it's sort of this ironic result that even though, you almost get two birds with one stone if you retreat from culture sometimes, in that you provide a training ground for the future leaders of the church, that sort of thing. And it doesn't always work like this, but sometimes you actually bring about quite a lot of cultural transformation. But it seems like the guys that just aim for the cultural transformation end up just almost losing the necessary withdrawal to give them the power for that transformation to begin with. So interesting little play there.
People are attracted to the zeal. I mean, even just with Gloriavale, in our own context, people are enchanted and entranced with this group of people who are willing to go the whole hog, live the holy life, focus on the family, as it were, and try and live out the commands of Christ in a literal fashion. Yeah, and that's appealing to a lot of people who are feeling themselves frustrated as they are constantly negotiating a level of compromise with the surrounding culture.
Yeah.
So,
in fact, that's, what did Niebuhr call that? The duplication principle. He was just saying, that's the credibility angle. Like Tertullian and those guys, they were just basically, listen, what the Bible says, we reduplicate in our lives. That's our credibility. So it means if the world is evil, we withdraw. And, we will live as, as a literal sort of withdrawal from the world. And people are fascinated, as you say. It gives a sense of credibility to it. Problem is, of course, that, you can't withdraw from yourself. The world is in you. And, there's going to hit a termination point there, which you just can't help. So it's not the answer, I don't think. And then there's the high priestly prayer of Christ that says, I pray that you do not take them out of the world. So there's that, as if we needed more. But
exactly.
Anyway, so you've got guys like Basil obviously kicking against a lot of what he saw was a major excess in the solitary monastic movement, and wanting to bring more of a moderation. What people comment on often with this sort of thing is that really it ended up looking like things that all Christians are meant to do anyway. Rather than something that was extreme and reserved for the elect, a few in the desert kind of thing. And so I think from all the little snippets I've read, it almost reminds me a little of Thomas A. Kemmis's Imitation of Christ. You have that kind of vibe where you just basically...
John Wesley's favorite book.
Yeah, and you can see why. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a command to, exhortation to really... follow Christ. I mean, it's moralism without the gospel, but if you're seeing it in light of the gospel and in response to the gospel, I think there's some powerful bits in those books and these books and this snippet as well. Anyway, so we had a little bit of trouble tracking down. I'm again reading from this kind of version in Tony Lane's book that's been translated afresh, but. Usually we're getting the next reading from the Ante-Nicene Fathers collection. Couldn't find it in that one this time.
Not in there.
So you might have to scour the interwebs for this one. Basil of Caesarea, The Long Rules is what we're looking at, and it's question 7. It's fairly shortish, so it's just the question and the answer. So I will go ahead and just read it all, and we can just I mean, just make a few comments. That's what people are waiting for. They need those comments.
Oh, yes.
And they can't go on in life without them. So we're going to help them out. All right, question 7 in this greater long rules. I think there are 55 questions. He wrote the long rules and the short rules. The long rules, 55 questions and answers. The short rules sounds like the long rules actually, but 313 questions. So I don't know how that works exactly. But anyway, question 7.
Shorter answers, maybe.
Yeah, short answers, exactly. All right. Since your words, is the question, since your words, in answer to question 6, have convicted us that it is dangerous to live in company with those who hold the commandments of God in light regard, we consider it logical to inquire whether one who retires from society should live in solitude or with brethren who are of the same mind and who have set before themselves the same goal, that is, the devout life. So they're kind of exactly what we were talking about. They're dealing with the issue of the solo monastic life or the communal monastic life. His reply, I consider that life passed in company with a number of persons in the same habitation is more advantageous in many respects. My reasons are, first, that no one of us is self-sufficient as regards corporeal necessities, but we require one another's aid in supplying our needs. Again, apart from this consideration, the doctrine of the charity of Christ does not permit the individual to be concerned solely with his own private interests. Charity, says the apostle, seeketh not her own. And that's a quote from 1 Corinthians 13:5. But a life passed in solitude is concerned only with the private service of individual needs. This is openly opposed to the law of love which the apostle fulfilled, who sought not what was profitable to himself, but to many that they might be saved. Furthermore, just before I go here, what I was just thinking, 2 things come to mind. There are a lot of principles here that apply directly to church membership, I think,
Exactly.
which is just very interesting. And then the other thing is, in light of the coronavirus and the self-isolation, in all seriousness, we're going to have to think about what church membership looks like for a while under self-isolation and how these principles apply. So let's come back to that. But furthermore, he says, a person living in solitary retirement will not readily discern his own defects, since he has no one to admonish and correct him with mildness and compassion. The greatest commandment, and the one especially conducive to salvation, is not observed, since the hungry are not fed, nor the naked clothed. Who then would choose this ineffectual and unprofitable life in preference to that which is both fruitful and in accordance with the Lord's command? I'll tell you who would. Every scholar on the planet. And every introvert. But anyways, we'll come back to that. I don't know. You got anything you want to...
No, I just thought it was excellent. I mean, he really values the idea of love being active in deeds, not just personal piety or personal belief, but working his faith out in the community.
Isn't it interesting the way...
It's a great definition. Yeah,
it's almost like you read it straight up for a church membership class. What he's calling the communal monastic life, we're just going, it's actually church. Just do that. Just become a member. But, no one's going to rebuke you. You got no one to love if you're alone. Sorry, you can't do any of
no one to serve.
No one another commands are happening for you if you're not actually with another person. So, there's all of that. Oh, man. Your screen's doing the funky monkey. Give it the slap of life, bro. Oh. What was that? I didn't hear no slap. All right. Besides, he says, if all we who are united in the same one hope of our calling, are one body with Christ as our head, we are also members one of another. If we are not joined together by union in the Holy Spirit, in the harmony of one body, but each of us should choose to live in solitude, we would not serve the common good in the ministry according to God's good pleasure, but would be satisfying our own passion for self-gratification. He who lives alone, consequently, and has perhaps one gift, renders it ineffectual by leaving it in disuse, since it lies buried within him. How much danger there is in this all of you know who have read the gospel. On the other hand, in the case of several persons living together, each enjoys his own gift and enhances it by giving others a share, besides reaping benefit from the gifts of others as if they were his own. Community life offers more blessings than can be fully and easily enumerated. It is more advantageous than the solitary life, both for preserving the goods bestowed on us by God and for warding off the external attacks of the enemy. Yeah, good points. If any should happen to grow heavy with that sleep, which is unto death, and which we have been instructed by David to avert with prayer, and he's thinking there of Psalm 13:3, enlighten my eyes that I never sleep in death. The awakening induced by those who are already on watch is the more assured. For the sinner, moreover, the withdrawal from his sin is far easier if he fears the shame of incurring censure from many acting together. And for the righteous man, there is a great and full satisfaction in the esteem of the group and in the approval of his conduct. Besides these advantages, the solitary life is fraught with other perils. The first and greatest is that of self-satisfaction. Since the solitary has no one to appraise his conduct, he will think that he has achieved the perfection of the precept. Secondly, because he never tests his state of soul by exercise, he will not recognize his own deficiencies, nor will he discover the advance he may have made in his manner of acting, since he will have removed all practical occasion for the observance of the commandments. Wherein will the solitary show his humility, if there is no one with whom he may compare, and so confirm his own greater humility? That's interesting. Wherein will he give evidence of his compassion, if he has cut himself off from association with other persons? And how will he exercise himself in long suffering, if no one contradicts his wishes? Consider further that the Lord, by reason of his excessive love for man, was not content with merely teaching the word, but so as to transmit to us clearly and exactly the example of humility in the perfection of charity, girded himself and washed the feet of the disciples. Whom therefore will you wash? To whom will you minister? In compassion, with whom will you be the lowest, if you live alone? So that's awesome. Interesting. There's no one that you can compare yourself with.
Very good.
No one to be. I love the way he's like, there's no one that you can compare yourself with. No one to know if you're the humblest. You got to know.
Yeah, I mean, there was some deep theology in there. I mean, he spoke about the fact that we are individually members one of another.
Oh, dude.
That we have a union with one another by the Spirit, and then on the basis of that theological reality, he says, we must necessarily be in one another's midst and connected to one another.
For sure.
So, I mean, he's starting with biblical theology, as Paul outlines it, that we are all, by the Spirit, members of the body of Christ. And for me, that's a big thing. That's what grounds my own theology of membership.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm part of you, you're part of me, and there's body care. I think it's an illustration that Tim Keller uses, where... you wake up in the middle of the night to go get a glass of water because you're really thirsty, and your pinky toe hits the side of the table and goes out all spastic on the side. The whole body reacts.
Yeah.
Even the eyebrows are involved,
True that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just that connectivity that, it has to be given expression in the body of Christ.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, this would be very relevant in our context to the disenfranchised Christian.
Yeah.
The post-church Christian, the emergent church Christian. Yeah. Those who have left the establishment of the church, who've bought George Barna's revolutionary idea that we need to get beyond church.
Yeah.
It denies these fundamental doctrines.
Yeah, it does. Just the carelessness of not being in membership, you get a lot of general, it's not even that you've bought into a certain alternative vision of Christianity, but it's just there is a laxness, in that you are content to just sort of drift through Christianity kind of on your own solo mission. You'll attend this church, attend that church, whatever it is. And, who knows? Maybe you find somewhere to land, but it's certainly not a priority. Nothing really floats your boat. I do see this. I certainly see this at a kind of general level, but I have noticed a lot of academics are in this boat. They will, maybe for one reason or another, maybe they're just too sold on one sort of particular brand, and they can't find exactly their brand in a church, or they're not satisfied with what this particular church can give them, and so they tend they write a lot of books, they talk a lot of talk, but they're just not churchmen at the end of the day. And so that's why it's almost a thing when you see a theologian who is a churchman. It's almost or a theologian who is an elder or a pastor. I mean, that's the real credibility right there.
To my mind, if someone's a churchman, they understand grace. They're not looking for perfection in the sinful bride of Christ yet.
Yeah.
They recognize that she's a work in progress, and on the basis of grace can unite with them, not because they're perfect, but because their sin is loved by God.
For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And, what I like what he says here as well, in that we might not put it in exactly the same way with exactly the same intent and goal here, but it's very similar in that let me see if I can get this out in a lucid way. But basically, this is kind of how it works. He says, listen, you're not going to be able to exercise this thing that you think you've worked. You're not going to be able to put it into practice and see exactly what you've got. And I feel like that's such a real thing anyway. I mean, and it works a little something like this. I go through this on a weekly basis. I'll be in my own monastic little office here, doing my thing, preparing my sermon, living, just this life of, it's half fantasy, half glory, half whatever. And, it's a very real process, because you're in the scriptures, you're thinking high and lofty thoughts, your heart is
responding. The tears are running down from your eyes.
Exactly.
You're out there posturing while you're preaching to yourself.
Well, I don't know if you're posturing, but basically you're there, mentally you're there. And all it takes, and you just realize the first 5 minutes of real life at church crushes everything. And all of a sudden,
church, it's real life across the yard with your kids.
True that. Yeah, same sort of thing. But not being Presbyterians and also not considering them the church, I'm just trying to limit it to even those that profess faith, And you should be going from glory to glory. I mean, what could be greater than going from individual personal prayer to hanging out with the body? And yet, what you find is, like within minutes, you're offended, you're awkward, you've said something stupid, someone else has been offended by something else you've done. It's like you're a bull in a china shop, and and it's just, this is life, and you sort of, you prick everyone else and they prick you, and we all just causing aggravation. And we're getting this, now we get to exercise the real thing, which is to bear with one another in love, and to actually
one other thing that I think that stood out for me was, you need community for spiritual warfare.
Yes, for sure.
I thought that was a good point, to help you with temptation, to help you keep accountable for sin. The power of sin is in its secrecy.
Mm-hmm.
If you have to be accountable to someone, you're bringing it into the light.
Mm-hmm.
There's that healthy fear of man, where you don't want to have to expose yourself and humiliate yourself again, so you're not going to sin again.
Yep.
So
there is
all of that comes into play, and
he does mention that literally. I mean, he goes there. He's just, you got to be scared. You got to be scared of the guys around. But the other thing is just the objectivity of being around someone else, like the objectivity of not being you, I suppose. You can tell yourself something. You can even tell yourself Jesus loves you. But when someone else tells you that, it's just, there is a design in that, and there's an objectivity in that, as you hear it come from someone else's words into you, rather than from you into you. And obviously the big idea there is that works with preaching, and you're sitting together with God's people hearing the word preached. But even just as that then is ruminated over in conversation, I mean, you know what it's like, right? You just, for all the difficulties that we go through in having to sort of bear with one another, or just perhaps even just deal with our own insecurities, talking to other people, there are those moments of those unexpected, amazing blessings where you're having coffee and someone will just say something and it just sticks in you, and that's the end of that. It just solves your problem, and you just feel so encouraged. And it just happens so often to me, and I couldn't imagine that you would be able to move too far without it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Maybe just on this note, the free book from Christian Audio this month is Life Together by Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Oh, one of my favorite books ever.
It's so good. I'm only in the second chapter, but man, I gave it to a guy who left Gloriavale, and he said, if only they had read just the first chapter of this book,
totally
would have changed everything.
Oh man.
So that'll be a good recommendation, right in line with everything that he's stressing here.
Okay, great. So that's on what audiobook? What?
ChristianAudio.com.
Oh, cool.
So you go onto the website, you subscribe for a free membership, and you ask for the newsletter, and you'll get one free book a month with a free membership. You don't have to pay anything.
Cool.
And the book this month is Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
There we go. Yeah, that's a great book. And yeah, again, on community, I mean, I don't know if I've read anything better, to be honest.
That's good.
So that's good. Now, I suppose what we're going to talk about, just in light of today and the situation, we are going live stream, most likely. We're about 90% there, I think, just in light of what's I think it was at 500 it was capped. What did you say earlier?
At the moment, the cap is 500. America has just gone no groups bigger than 10.
Yeah, I know that. So it's probably moving in that direction.
Jacinda was talking about a capping it at 50.
Yeah. And so in that case, even, we would be over 50. But I think it's almost like we're getting a sense for the trajectory. So it's like you might as well just hop on the bandwagon and help each other out.
Might just escalate very quickly. I mean, I'm hoping they cap it at 50 and leave it at that, because that would suit me.
Yeah.
I think we could handle asking our old folk to just self-isolate, stay at home. If they need shopping, we'll do it for them. And then we just take the rest of the congregation under 50 years old, break it up into groups of less than 50, and then we have more than one service in the day. So we'd probably drop our evening service and then just have small groups.
Would you have something for the elderly to watch? Or?
Most of them, some of them don't even have cell phones.
Okay, so you're in quite a rural setting.
So you wouldn't no, it's not rural. It's just like old school. Why should I get rid of my fax machine when email comes along? Sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay. So there's not much you can do there. All right. Well, what do you think about this? Okay, what we are going to do, we're probably just going to roll with Zoom or some other platform.
Yeah.
And we'll probably just squash our community groups into something that I like this idea that basically you preach the sermon, and I'll have the elders with me on Zoom, and everyone's in and muting their mics and whatnot. And I think Zoom goes up to 100, so you're good until that.
Does it? I thought it was 10. Okay, cool.
No, up to 100. I mean, I don't know if we got the paid version though, so that might affect it. But whether it's YouTube Live or whatever. Bottom line is everyone's there doing a thing, and then what we'll do is split into smaller little groups afterwards, our home groups. And everyone's, and then you can do a very reasonable Zoom chat or Skype or whatever it is. And everyone's kind of hanging out together, and we'll just go through our normal sermon questions that we normally discuss on Wednesday. And I think that together with the sermon will give us a sense of, it's just better than a sermon recording. Let's put it that way. It's just a little bit more connected on the day. Everyone's together, even if not together. We're praying together. We're doing that sort of thing. And then, I did have this thought. I was like, communion, interesting one, right? Because obviously we're all about communion.
Now you bring out that old school one of taking it to people's houses.
Yeah, I was just, because how we administer the table normally is...
but don't do the single cup like the Catholic woman did this morning, and she's in the newspaper with a picture of her church.
Can we just stop doing the common cup already? Can we just stop doing it? While we're...
Can we stop doing the public shaming of anyone who's actually got the coronavirus?
Can we just stop being Roman Catholic? Can we just stop that as well? No, I'm not. I'm kidding. But I was thinking. I haven't flown this by the L. This is a pipe dream. Okay, off the cuff. And sorry, this might get shut down. And I'm just putting this out there. I just want to get what you think. We normally administer the table. Benny or myself will be there, and we'll break the bread. And we'll pour the wine, and we'll read the word of institution. And then we've already got the bread that's cut and the wine in the little shot glasses kind of thing. And that gets taken out. So it's not like anyone's pulling the bread off anyway, So what you could do is you could have the bread and the wine at the, one of the guys is doing it. Like I could be doing it. Benny could be doing it at his place. And then everyone, you could just, instead of administering, having the deacons take it along, because it's not really the same loaf of wine anyway, we could just get them to organize their own materials, so to speak, and then they could partake. What do you think about that? That's pretty edgy, right?
Yeah, I mean it's as a short-term measure, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to see it the permanent sort of thing.
No, for sure. Well, I mean, nothing would be permanent.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think the options we're looking at is okay. So we just don't do communion
Yeah.
for a while, which isn't a train
you-
smash. You know, I mean, like
you
out
do
of
weekly communion.
Yeah.
We only do monthly.
yeah, exactly. And so to do monthly wouldn't be it's really as often as you meet. You know, so for us, it's like we're not meeting, we're not doing communion. That's fine. But I just thought I don't have any good theological reason not to go ahead with that, which is kind of interesting. It had me on the back foot. So anyways, I'll put it out there for anyone listening.
Yeah, I guess the arguments against it would be the same as satellite church.
Yeah, no, because once you go down that track, it's like, what
Yeah.
on earth? I mean,
See, I'm willing to accommodate it not as legit, but
Yeah.
as an accommodation because we can't have
Well,
the ideal
and I
as
think
a
that's what-
short-term measure.
yeah, and I
But I
think
wouldn't want to normalize it in any way.
I think that's what
Yeah.
keeps it together for me, because at the end of the day, you know, it's really coming down to what the church together is experiencing and what the elders are. You know, you're administering the table in that you're not.
Yeah.
We typically allow it to an open table anyway, a freedom of conscience thing.
So who do you stop coming to the table?
Well, that's, you know,
You only
that's-
have members. You have a membership sign-in Zoom group.
well, that's kind of what we are going to do.
Yeah. So the only difficulty is the discipline aspect.
Yeah, I think so. Now, what we normally do with the discipline aspect is, you know, if there is someone, yeah, that's true. I think that's the issue, because if there is someone that, you know, we just would be inappropriate, you wouldn't be
Yeah.
able to stop that, and it almost gives sanction to it, you know, without necessarily.
Yeah.
meaning
Would
to.
you baptize someone like that?
No, I just wouldn't. Call me old school. Call me old school, but I just can't do it. Oh man. Anyway, so I just thought let's put that out there. But I think probably what we'll do is just, you know, to have a really simple little gathering like that. Now, beyond the Sunday service, because we know that's not the do all and end all of the Christian life, we still got to be self-isolating, and yet, you know, what are ways that we could get around that? What are some?
You know, I had a thought. You know, there are a lot of singles, there are a lot of widows. Maybe a family should adopt someone as an extra family member. So it's like they isolate themselves with one other person in the church.
Right.
They basically just extend their family for that period. You know what I'm saying?
No.
So like, let's say there's a young adult who lives around the corner and they're not married.
Okay, got it. So they would
And
be
they have to self-isolate for 2 weeks. Why don't they just rather come and eat their meals with us for 2 weeks?
right. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
So self-isolate with our family. So we just extend our family for that period.
It's a great idea.
So that there aren't people isolating themselves as individuals.
Anyone? Yeah, no, totally. I think that makes sense. I mean, I know a lot of people wouldn't mind, but you know, for those who feel that that's a little bit much, I mean, yeah, you can certainly extend that, and that would help a lot, I think, just to create that community.
Yeah.
The other thing is just to be using it as time for, you know, prayer instead of fellowship. I mean, you're still united in the Spirit in a very particular way, and you know, every now and again, you can make use of circumstances in a way that, you know, is advantageous. You know, you can just you know, here we are unable to meet together for Wednesday night where we normally would. Why don't we spend that time praying for each other? And you know, whether that's on Zoom or not, I mean, what a powerful thing. Read
books, man.
There we go. There's another one. Just get some Christian disciplines going. And you know, the thing is, with, you know, obviously it's never going to replace person-to-person contact, but I mean, wow, what a blessing it is to have stuff like we're doing right now in a time like this. I mean, can you imagine?
It's absurd.
Yeah, it's just it's a real grace. It's a common grace in and with the common curse. You know, there is something ameliorative about the difficulty we're experiencing, even in the technology that we're experiencing. So it's a big thought right there, and a lot to be thankful for, and a lot to make use of. And
our diaconal services can continue. I mean, if there are any shops open, and there are old folk who are self-isolating because they feel they're more at risk, our deacons, our younger folk, can serve the older folk by being willing to do the shopping, by being willing to do the run around and pick up the stuff that's needed and drop off parcels at people's houses.
For sure.
So,
and you know, another thing that I think that could come out of it is, again, you know, it's sort of, you don't want to fall into some sort of providentialism here. You don't want to be thinking about, you know, what God is necessarily doing, but you can't help but see that through it all, things just get more organized. We get more geared for the future. We just start thinking in terms and ways that will help the church move forward, and all of that's already sort of happening. It's a reality check for a lot of people. I think it's a wake-up call for a lot of people. It might even lead to churches, once we're able to meet, becoming a little bit fuller, in light of the fact that actually, we realize how flimsy everything is, and to place all our stock and trade in this life. And then, of course, we got the recession that's coming up, and so there are a lot of things that I think are going on, and a lot of things that will, that we can really be actively pursuing, and almost, I don't want to say getting excited about, but just kind of just thankful to the Lord for, and pursuing in ways that aren't stagnant.
I was thinking about intercessory prayer. I mean, think about what our prayers should be at this time. So we're praying for our politicians. How much sleep are they losing trying to keep ahead of the curve on trying to manage what has to happen next for millions of people? Think about all the health services, how stressed they're going to be. Think about the economic situation with, like you say, the recession and so on. Think of all the schools. Think of all the jobs with parents having to stay at home with their kids. Think of all the old folk in all the old age homes all around. Think of everyone who gets their living from the tourist industry. We've got friends in Rarotonga, and there's just no tourists. Everyone's cancelled. And it's like, what are we going to do for money now? It's a big deal. So there's going to be certain sectors of the economy that are going to be extremely hard hit. Yeah,
for sure.
So
absolutely,
lots of things to pray for.
Lots of things to pray for sure. And I can't remember what I was going to say now. There was another point that came to mind as you were speaking. But I think that's helpful, and definitely, talking about two ages and two kingdoms, and just thinking as we normally think around those ideas on this podcast. I mean, it is a really incredible opportunity to make use of that grid in which to understand what to do now. To be a church that's being helpful to the government. You mentioned praying for them, but not being that obtrusive stickler church, but instead seeking the peace of the city. What an amazing opportunity to seek the peace of the city.
One of the things I've been encouraging my people is not to be part of the panic.
Yes.
I mean, everyone in the world is offended that they might be confronted with the possibility that they may die. And it's like, that's the reality every day because of the fall, never mind the coronavirus, and everyone's going around looking to blame someone. We always do that. If your wife gives you the cold, you say, you gave it to me. We just amplify that when it comes to something big like this. And I mean, at the end of the day, Adam was the one, we're interpreting it through the storyline of the Bible, and keeping calm, trusting that everything is in God's hands. Trusting in his sovereignty, trusting that he has appointed the day of our death, and just showing love despite all of these things. It's key.
Amen. Yeah. Love your neighbor. Be a good citizen. Trust in those means that God has provided for you to press on in the Christian life. And I mean, all these things are, so simple and so Christianity 101, but they are the things that form the powerful testimony at times like this. So anyways, it turns out that all you needed to do was read a Cappadocian Father. There we go. To get all of this info. I told you, you have to wait for the comments. It's all in the comments, bro.
Bishop Baz.
So we're looking at where is it now? The next Cappadocian Father. Nazianzus.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So that's good. That's the theological orations.
Sweet.
All right, so don't miss that one. That's coming next. Do you want to sing us out, or?
Hey? I was going to say the moral of the story from this particular one is, go to church.
Oh, go to Zoom church. Go to Zoom Community Church.
Go to YouTube Live church.
Oh, dude, totally. Hey, maybe we just start our own church. We'll start a two-age Sojourners church. And I'm just kidding. Just everyone relax. I'm just kidding. And there will be no online communion either. That was also kind of a joke, so just relax.
And no online baptism. But you can but online giving is fine. But online preaching is fine.
Definitely online ordination.
Ooh.
You know what I mean? I mean, sure, you'll have to give for that, but we'll make it happen for you. You just send us the check. We'll ordain you. It's all good. We'll make you a 2-age Sojourner priest.
Yeah, online doctorates.
Online doctorates from the ancient university of 2-age sojourning. All right, good. Nick, you gonna sing us out, or are we gonna